Yeah, so let's start with how I started with everything. 5 years ago, there was a project I've been working on called SkyFeed, which back then was a little decentralized social network I tried to build myself completely from scratch because I really liked the idea and concept of having a decentralized identity control and where you can post content and everything. It was built on a content address storage network, Saya Skynet, which unfortunately was VC funded and died 2 years later. So my social network also didn't really went anywhere, but it gave me a lot of experience. Why does this? Sorry. Yeah, so I'm still working on content address stuff, so I'm now building my own little protocol, so that's kind of my main thing. That's kind of compatible with IPFS and other nice stuff you might have heard of, but yeah. Then a few years ago, or 2 years ago to be precise, I discovered Blue Sky randomly using via my work on this network because I've been on the AHOY Discord, who are also working on a new IPFS implementation. And they shared an invite link with me. And then the first thing I did was build a custom client because that's also the thing I did 5 years ago. And I also was the first client to implement support for custom feeds. So even before you had like the official Blue Sky app supporting them, there was already the spec with all of the lexicons, and you could add them manually in the SkyFeed app and then preview them. And it's also like the main way the early feeds used to debug if their feeds work. Yeah, so and then I went a bit wild, creating a lot of feeds as soon as they were available in an official app. For example, this more complex one. Yeah, maybe I went a bit too wild. Yeah, but then the really interesting part that I've been started working on was a feed builder, because of course there were already like maybe 100, 200 feeds, but it was a bit hard to like build one yourself, especially if you wanted to backfill or build like maybe something more complex. But also you needed to self-host it. So all of these reasons then came to me building the SkyFeed feed builder. And it basically allows you to, so it's really annoying with this, I should have tested this before. So maybe you have seen the SkyFeed builder before, how it works. On the left side, you have all of your blocks. They run from top to bottom, and then you can build your feed. For example, this is a replica of the official AHOY feed. On the left side, you first see we do some regular expression filtering. Then we input the list with the participants, and there's a second list. We move the duplicates and sort them by HN ranking, which basically just means more recent ones up, but they also need some more likes, and the older they are, the more likes they need to be up. One very cool thing about SkyFeed is that every feed you publish on SkyFeed is actually completely source available. So for any feed, you can just check how it's implemented, because that's part of the public feed record that's published. And this is also a requirement because my infrastructure doesn't store any additional data. If you want to generate a feed or access a feed on SkyFeed, then what my infrastructure does is check the public feed record and use that to generate a feed. You can also choose a license when publishing, which can then be used to also fork feeds in the SkyFeed app if users who are feed builders who made one allow it. I'm very, very annoyed by this presentation software, sorry. Yeah, so SkyFeed is pretty popular. It was the first feed builder, but it's still the most used one. There are, of course, some very cool new options like race, joining the race, but yeah. So there's also a stats page you can access to see how many requests all of the different popular but also less popular feeds receive every day. This data is all public. So how can I host so many feeds with a limited budget? So the trick is that instead of generating every feed request manually, I have a nice shiny big caching layer, which for 95% or more of feed requests doesn't even need to calculate anything, but just looks at the Redis cache. Oh, this feed has been generated like 40 seconds ago already. This is a static feed, which show, or not a static, but a non-personalized feed, so it shows the same to everyone. I can just return that. And that's very, very cheap and fast and quick. And a nice side effect is for most feeds you access via SkyFeed, you get like 5 millisecond response time. Sorry, this presentation software, I should have not used Reveal.js. Unfortunately, it still had some issues, so you may have seen in November there was a lot of SkyFeed downtime, and recently there has also been some. But really the core edit is, if it's not cached, then it hits the SkyFeed query engine. And the magic here is that it keeps as much as possible in memory. It's written in Rust. It uses some shiny things like roaring bitmaps. It's of course free and open source. And I tuned this a lot over the last few months and years. And as you can see, now it's running pretty reliably because most outages were caused by the query engine. Yeah, then personalized feeds. SkyFeed also supports building personalized feeds in theory. Either you can build today, just input a list with a little placeholder / mutuals, for example. And this is the most popular SkyFeed feed, the mutuals feed. And this is exactly how it's implemented and works. Now, the limitation is you can't publish this feed, because if you publish it, then my feed infrastructure simply won't generate it, because personalized feeds are way more expensive. The caching is a lot less efficient, of course, because I need to actually generate most of the feeds. So right now I need to manually unlock them for performance reasons, but it's possible. Yeah. Then another most popular feed, or a very popular feed that I'm personally created, which is also extremely simple, is just you input yourself and then sort by ascending. And this feed is very popular because users just use it to check the first post they made on Blue Sky. Okay, so other stuff I've been working on, I need to get a bit quicker. So I've been working on a little custom language which you can use to define more complex feeds, but which is completely compatible with SkyFeed. So for example, the input and sort blocks are just one-to-one the thing in the visual editor, but with more concise syntax. If you want to do some more complex stuff, it's a lot easier to work with. There's also scripting support, so it's not that advanced yet, but you can use it to, for example, calculate a custom scoring function. So if you don't want to sort just by the most recent ones or the most likes ones, you can do like a combination of likes and repost counts, for example. Then for a while there have been an integration with SkyGraph Art, which made like this really, really cool algorithm where they assembled communities based on interactions between users, and then you can, for example, show posts from your community. Yeah, then there are some more algorithmic feeds. For example, this one is funny because it basically looks all of the SkyFeed feeds that are generated, in which of them posts that you like appear the most, and then shows you other posts from the same feed. So I'm basically using all of this massive power of curation of all these individual little feeds for very niche topics to algorithmically show you the stuff that you likely want to see. Then you can combine all of that. These are some test feed. So how is all of this funded? Thanks, there are a lot of sponsors who are sponsoring me on GitHub. It's not quite covering the costs at the moment, so I also need to explore some other ways maybe to get money, but I really don't want to show any ads on SkyFeed feeds, and I also want to keep as many features as possible completely free for all users, because that really led to this feed ecosystem being so big and so many exciting and cool feeds being built. Of course, there are also still issues. Some posts are sometimes not indexed because my indexer is still really bad. It's written in a Dart programming language, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it's single-threaded and that it can't keep up sometimes, and that it's way too slow to index the entire network from scratch. So SkyFeed only survives because it's been running for 2 years without downtime. That's more than like the relay backfill or relay. So it's been running for 2 years because, yeah, sorry. Okay, so let's build a new indexer and database. That's my current project. I'm building a new indexer in Rust. The idea here is records are grouped by time. They are serialized with archive and stored on disk. And then all of these post-archive files are synced to servers running the query engines. So it's pretty much a custom database. And this data can then be accessed very efficiently thanks to archive with memory mapping and zero-copy deserialization. Of course, it's also fully open source. How does this look? So for example, this is the profile. We just have a little Rust struct. We say it's archive, and serialize the trait. So it can be serialized and accessed via archive. Then this is how this looks on disk, for example. You have just sharded by the TID or R key of every single post. Yeah, so what if Blue Sky is even bigger? So the fun part about this architecture is that the archive files could just be stored in object storage instead and scale infinitely, so I don't need to keep adding SSDs to my very expensive Hetzner servers. And instead just cache the most recent ones locally and in memory, so that the most frequently accessed data is still very quick. But if you want to access a very old post, for example, for your feed, then it needs to be fetched from object storage, which is still fine, but this makes it possible to pretty much scale infinitely. Also, this makes bootstrapping third-party SkyFeed engine providers a lot more easier, because you could literally just download, if I made them available publicly, just download all of these archive files. It's like 5 terabytes in total, but you could do that, and then just run your own query engine. And then users literally just need to change one field in their feed generator record, and it now starts hitting the independent new provider and generates exactly the same feed, because, as I said, the definition is public and part of the feed record. I don't have any secret state on my servers. So, and the last slide. A decentralized app view. So apart from making SkyFeed more decentralized with this by making it easier to self-host them, of course, these archive structures or this new database can also be optimized to support queries that are used for an app view. So for example, that you can very efficiently, by key value addressing, get all posts made by the single user and then access all of the individual posts from this archives. And this could also make it possible to just run a decentralized app view by having everything be content addressed and made them available over S5, IO, IPFS, whatever, using Blake tree hashes. And then you could just verified streaming access all of these nice, so these are all binary B trees in these archive files, and then you could just access very efficiently directly which records you want, or also which queries you want, as long as the indexer which generates these records, these archives, generates the index you want. Yeah, and this also allows for very cool optimization. So you could have like a web app that completely that accesses the data directly, and you could also have like local caches with, for example, you could keep like the most recent 3 or 4 gigabytes of Blue Sky post archive data locally on your disk, and then have pretty much instant browsing experience if you stay in the last 7 days of content you explore. So there are some really interesting possibilities. Okay, then join the effort if you want to help with this project. My main limitation right now is time that I can spend working on this. So feel free to talk to me at the conference or message me on Blue Sky. You can also follow me, of course. And maybe we find some more people interested in this project. And yeah, thanks for listening.